कुमार स्वामी नायक गोंगो लुगु लटोका रेडियो फीजी 2 में पुराना गाना लगे हमें बहुत अच्छा लगे।
रेडियो फीजी 2 देश की धड़कन।
Good evening, Fiji. In this bulletin, PM and Rambuka go head-on in budget debate. Sugar payment issues clarified in Parliament. And opposition MP blames evil forces for COVID-19.
From the studios of FBC Suva, Jackie Spate.
Prime Minister Vurengem Bainimarama says opposition leader Sitiveni Rambuka is one of the reasons Fiji's economy came to a standstill some 30 years ago. During the budget debate in Parliament today, Rambuka labelled the latest national budget as irresponsible and a deceiving budget. He went on to claim that Fiji First does not take on board ideas from the opposition. Bainimarama says Rambuka needs to own up and accept that Fiji has suffered for too long due to the actions of some. Lena with the details.
In his debate address, Sitiveni Rambuka says the budget is nothing less than that of a doomsday budget, adding that the government continues to be bullish on expenditure and refuses to consolidate government finances.
The Minister for Economy blames us, and me personally, for the problems that exist now, referring to things that happened more than 3 decades ago. Mr. Speaker, sir, it is now time that the Fiji First government take full responsibility of the things they did wrong and stop blaming others.
The leader of the opposition was talking about manipulation. Let's not forget the manipulation that caused the demise of the National Bank of Fiji. So use of these words align themselves to his own doings, not the Frank Bainimarama-led Fiji First government. As we gathered, they don't seem to understand the measures we put together and the strategies we come up with to put this budget together. Little understanding.
Calls from the leader of opposition for the government to consider discussions with other parties to fight the economic downturn were shot down by the Prime Minister.
On many occasions in the past, Mr. Speaker, sir, I had called on the government for a bipartisan approach in addressing issues of national interest, but they have always fallen on deaf ears.
This is coming from a man who brought us to our knees and brought racial intolerance. Racial intolerance in 1987. Order. They don't seem to understand, Honorable Speaker, that bipartisanship requires agreement. We are poles apart from agreement. They preach a divisive society. We don't. And if we can't get past that, how can there ever be a bipartisanship?
Meanwhile, Rambuka has highlighted that the people of Fiji must unite and stand together in these trying times, urging that we prioritize the human side of everything, keeping in mind the future of our citizens. Lena Rees, FBC News.
And the Prime Minister says the national budget is aimed at assisting everyone who has been affected by COVID-19 and to also avoid what could be the worst economic catastrophe. Vurengem Bainimarama says Fiji is pressing forward with maybe the boldest national budget in our history. Koroi Tandulala reports.
The Prime Minister says it's important that Fiji build its way out of the pandemic crisis by working together.
When a job is lost, you lose more than a paycheck. You lose a sense of purpose. You lose a piece of who you are as a person, as a wife, as a husband, as a provider for your family. The countless Fijians I've met with need help now, and they will get it. But these Fijians want more than just a handout. They want the dignity of working again. They want their business open again. They want to see their country back from the brink.
Bainimarama says the budget provides assistance to those who need it most with a $100 million grant in unemployment assistance.
Mr. Speaker, the opposition can shut their eyes to these global realities all they want. I really don't care. I put my stock in the international economic experts over failed former professors. But no Fijian should be blind to the hardship our people are facing. Nobody's ego should block their view of what is at stake here. We have an economy to save by any means necessary. We have people to serve.
The Prime Minister says the stimulus budget will help employ people, build confidence and ripple throughout the entire economy, allowing Fijians to slowly return to work and start earning again. Koroi Tandulala, FBC News.
The government has provided almost $300 million in direct support to cane farmers over the past 7 years. Prime Minister and Minister for Sugar Industry, Vurenge Bainimarama, says the government is also providing cane planting grants in an effort to increase quality sugarcane supplied to the mills. The PM also clearing all doubts over the sugarcane payments. Koroy Tandulala reports.
The Minister for Sugar Industry says they have outlined some of the assistance that will be provided to cane farmers this crushing season.
Cane growing is the only agriculture sector to which we guarantee a price per ton. And that relief comes on top of the cane planting grant, the building of new cane access roads, the subsidization of fertilizer and weedicide, the buying of new trucks, the assistance we grant new farmers, and our commitment to accelerating mechanization, all which are fully funded this year.
But in our time, no money was given to us whatsoever. But this time, government been giving them grant to plow the field and plant new canes. I haven't seen much new cane being planted, and so quality of the cane is the question.
The Minister for Sugar Industry adds they are also committed to delivering their promise to cane farmers of paying $85 per ton.
We promise cane growers a guaranteed price per ton of $85 for 3 full sessions. That promise will be delivered. The first three payments of the third season will be paid at $70 per ton, but in the fourth and final wash-up payment will make up the full amount of $85 per ton, as we always do.
The Ministry of Sugar Industry was allocated $53.6 million in the 2020-2021 budget, a decrease of $16.8 million from the previous allocation. Koroy Tandulala, FBC News.
And staying with the budget debate, opposition MP Mithiel Mbulanauda, while denouncing the budget, says the Fiji First and China are responsible for the crisis we are in. He said it was evil groups which helped in the spread of the virus.
Following that, perhaps a world evil group using China, a communist dictatorial regime, to invent or manufacture COVID-19 as a biological weapon against the West or capitalist democratic society, in particular against USA. We also suffer in between.
Up ahead, central bank says interest rates can come down. And EU and UN throw support for budget.
मेरा नाम शिबू है, मैं तावा टाउन में रहता हूँ and I love listening to Mirchi FM, it's hot.
My name is Kartik Abdestan, Aura Ba में Mirchi FM, it's hot.
नमस्कार, मैं अलीम हूँ लंबासा से, मैं हमेशा मिर्ची FM सुनता हूँ. मिर्ची FM is hot in लंबासा.
Mirchi FM, it's hot.
Opposition Member of Parliament Moses Mbulitavu says that certain policies outlined in the national budget are inconsistent. Mbulitavu says this reform is not applicable to Fijians in rural and informal areas, as the majority do not need these goods on a daily basis. Chosaina Nunga reports.
Moses Mbulitavu is urging government to impose realistic policies in these times of uncertainty.
Removal of the 9% VAT on rice, on flour, on basic food items which people in the rural areas depend and use every day. So these are some of the things that people are worried about.
He went on to say that government should not be giving false hope to Fijians in addressing unemployment. However, Prime Minister Vurenge Bainimarama says projects to be carried out in the next financial year will create over 200 employment opportunities.
And that is why we are also pressing ahead with the CWM hospital projects, the Lotoka police station, the Nandi police station, the Bar Court House, the Prime Minister's office complex, and other projects, the construction of which will employ over 1,600 Fijians. Mr. Speaker, these are not rich people. These are not rich people. These are ordinary, hard-working Fijians whose skills ought to be earning them a living.
Mbulitavu, however, says collaboration is needed to ensure we overcome the trickle-down effects of the pandemic. Chosaina Nunga, FBC News.
The Reserve Bank Governor Arif Ali says banks could start reducing lending rates. The governor says the liquidity is expected to rise to $1 billion. Therefore, there should be downward pressure on the interest rates. Kritika Kumar reports.
The central bank says deposit rates will fall, which becomes an input in the lending rate. Therefore, the banks should start reducing the lending rate.
Given that banks will have a large amount of funds to lend out, $1 billion, on one hand they take deposits, they can't be keeping it Reserve Bank because we don't give them any interest on that. Sooner or later they'll lend. So, hopefully, we will see some pickup in commercial bank lending rate to support the economy, given some of the incentives announced in the budget.
Ali also highlighted that banks and financial institutions collectively have restructured loans totaling to $3.4 billion, which represents 50% of the overall portfolio.
And this includes about close to $900 million of SME loans, and the client numbers or number of loans is about close to 4,000. So banks are, trying to assist their clients as much as possible so that they survive this pandemic.
I'm sure at this time, I think banks really have to move up. Although they're rolling over the in the loan terms, restructuring the loans by extending the term, but that will accumulate interest rate.
The governor says liquidity is currently hovering around $720 million. He also highlighted that the inflationary pressures remain contained and the inflation rate has been negative since October last year as prices of food, yangona and fuel have fallen over the year. Kritika Kumar, FBC News.
The new budget is necessary under current circumstances, and policies introduced along with relief packages will help and protect those affected. The European Union and the United Nations says the national budget has simplified and lowered the cost of doing business, especially for the private sector. Kelly Vavallo reports.
The EU says the budget is one that will help Fijians get back on their feet.
You have a lot of people who lost their jobs or source of income, so the second necessary element is a social safety nets, and we have that to help and protect the people who are unemployed.
Ambassador EU Sujeru Sim adds without tourism sector down, generating business activity is imperative.
This is also giving the good signal to the main engine for recovery, which is the private sector, by simplifying and lowering the cost of doing business in this country. So I think this is a good budget.
Commenting the budget, the United Nations says it stands ready to support government in these trying times.
We've understood what the impact is. We also understood that the impact will keep changing, will keep evolving, because this crisis is sadly far from over, and so we need to keep the finger on the pulse.
PS of the Prime Minister's office, Yogesh Karan, says the implementation of some recommendations from the UN will be challenging but is necessary.
We will need to look at the utilization of the resources we have very carefully so that we are able to address the very challenging situations that we have ahead of us.
The UN, through a socio-economic impact assessment, says Fiji should continue to strike a balance between COVID-19 preventative measures and responses with democratic space and rule of law. Kelly Vadala, FBC News.
And turning overseas, Spanish authorities are insisting the country remains a safe destination for tourists after rising COVID-19 cases. The Spanish government says the situation was under control, pointing out that half of the new cases detected were asymptomatic and adding that the health system was not under pressure. This from TVNZ. And it's business time now with Whitney.
Thanks, Jackie. In business tonight, work starts to attract tourists to Fiji. And in growing Fiji, local cruises start picking up. Stay with us.
au matitu mai botkola au tata tinga tabua ondo mai boli tina singile wango na makete ondo tali taka na barrongo na radio Fiji 1 ondo mai biti
ola binariki ayo na wango kelera nai na ton mai na corona lota mai yang te mai pa do tali tangi ne na to mai biti na to bonga ni be ya ya Radio Fiji 1 nando mai biti
The government is working with Fiji Airways and is offering $60 million to stimulate demand and attract tourists back to the country. Fiji Airways has been selected to set up and lead the Bula Bubble campaign, which will offer attractive Fiji holiday packages to Australian and New Zealand visitors. Through the packages, the hotels must reduce their rates by at least 45%, and the airline will also reduce their rates. Kritika Kumar has the details.
Economy Minister Yaset Kayum highlighted that as per the package, people will be able to pay now and travel later, which will help Fiji pre-position itself.
And so we've allocated $60 million. So from government side, we will pay $400 per tourist that enters Fiji under that package. And it's for the first 150,000 tourists.
The minister says looking at the uncertainties due to the pandemic, tourists can even defer their travelling date.
But the fact is, Fiji Airways will get the cash now. Outrigger will get the cash now. There are many hotels that are empty, but they still have to pay $3, $4, $5 million in insurance premiums. So insurance is not going to stop. In the same way, the rising waters won't stop just because of this pandemic. So we have to ensure that they get cashed up. We only pay the rebate once the tourist sets foot in Fiji.
Seth Kiyum says the country still depends on the tourism industry and the Fiji National Provident Fund owns 4 to 5 hotels. Fiji Airways in a statement acknowledged the government for this package as well as other attractive incentives which will spur tourism recovery. Kritika Kumar, FBC News.
British retail sales grew more strongly than expected in June. They returned to almost a pre-lockdown level as non-essential shops in England reopened in the middle of the month.
British shoppers appear to have wasted no time in getting back to the stores. Retail sales grew more strongly than expected in June. In fact, they returned to almost their pre-lockdown level as non-essential shops in England reopened in the middle of the month. Retail sales grew by nearly 14% from May. Compared with June 2019, sales were down 1.6%, but that was a much smaller fall than the 6.4% forecast. Britain's economy shrank by more than a quarter in March and April, and only recovered slightly in May when there was a limited relaxation of lockdown rules. The Bank of England's chief economist, Andy Haldane, has pointed to private sector data suggesting a rapid V-shaped recovery, with the economy growing by around 1% a week. But many of his colleagues are doubtful of a sustained recovery. Online spending, which soared at the start of the lockdown, fell as a share of overall spending in June as shoppers in England returned to stores. Consumer sentiment, though, still remains well below its level before the coronavirus struck Britain. And cafes and restaurants have reported subdued demand since they reopened on July the 4th. There's also a concern that virus risks plus a jump in unemployment could halt the recovery.
We now join Sinifa from HFC Bank with the latest from the money market.
On the South Pacific Stock Exchange last week, 9 listed entities recorded trade, with 8 noting share price movements. As such, the total market value fell marginally by 0.27% and concluded the week at $3.43 billion. On the foreign exchange front, an economic rebound in China, which is Australia's biggest export market, and positive developments on a coronavirus vaccine helped the Aussie currency surge by about 16% against the greenback since April. Still, risks remain with the Aussie due to its deteriorating relations with Beijing and simmering tensions between US and China. Looking ahead in the week, we have a few economic data and events lined up, especially Australia's second quarter CPI, Japanese retail sales, and German and European Union's GDP for second quarter. But the biggest theme in the economic calendar this week is the US interest rate decision. Although the US Federal Reserve is expected to leave rates unchanged, any surprises otherwise would weigh heavily on market sentiments. That's all from HFC Bank for now. Vinaka.
Turning to today's local exchange rates as set this morning. To start the week, the Fiji dollar was on the up against 4 of our major currencies that we trade with. We were up against the Chinese yuan, the US dollar, the Australian dollar, and the PNG kina. Commodities improved all around. Crude oil prices was up to $41.22 per barrel. Gold climbed to $1,919 per ounce, and silver finished at $23.01 an ounce. Captain Cook Cruises is still coming to terms with the overwhelming support shown by locals during times of hardships faced by the tourism industry due to the pandemic. However, things are slowly normalizing to some extent as the cruise operator was the first to set sail from Port General 3 weeks ago, following the lifting of certain COVID-19 restrictions. Felipe Nacaso has more.
The numbers continue to rise each weekend for Captain Cook Cruises as they continue to use different ways to attract locals.
One thing that we need to understand is that everybody is starting on a level playing field now. We are all faced with the same challenges in terms of trying to access the local market, in terms of penetrating the local market. So we are all learning as we're going along on how we do business or how we operate our ships in these new times.
On Saturday, Captain Cook recorded the highest number of guests since borders shut down earlier this year. These 41 passengers were taken to Tiviwa Island, which is approximately a 1-hour trip.
This is a birthday gift surprise for her, and we are pretty certain we're going to enjoy the cruise. And I vouch for people, whilst the opportunity is there, go for the cruise.
We know what's going on with the tourism industry. Just want to help in its reviving.
Since operations resumed, the company has re-engaged at least 22 staff while stating that no worker has been terminated.
With the local inquiries, it's positive in itself that people know about it, people are interested, people want to come out from hibernation and go on a day cruise and relax with the family or friends.
Captain Cook is planning to roll out its dinner cruises, but they'll have to assess the market first. Felipe Naikaso, FBC News.
That's it from Business Tonight. We now join Jamie with the latest in sports.
Pinaka Whitney, and good evening. Ahead in sports, new Nanronga Centre steps up. And Suva football admits improvements needed before Mba clash. This and more coming up.
नाम ललेश नारायण है हम रेडियो PG2 सुनता है रेडियो PG देश के लड़का
जी हाँ मैं ताबुआ शहर से बोल रहा हूँ मेरा नाम शर्मा है फिलहाल मैं रेडियो PG2 हमेशा सुनता हूँ जो रेडियो PG2 देश का धड़कन
मेरा नाम चंद्रा है मैं रकेती से बात करती हूँ आपके राम राम मुझे रेडियो PG2 बहुत पसंद है
रेडियो PG2 देश की धड़कन
A talented young player was introduced to Premier Domestic Rugby at Lawanga Park on Saturday. 20-year-old Chonetani Wasurakuta from Nakorobo in Serua did not disappoint when he debuted for Nanronga against Suva in the Skipper Cup Fairbrother Challenge. Caroline Tavi reports.
Stand still.
The former Lomeri Secondary School student secured a year scholarship in 2018 to play and study in New Zealand, where he featured for Timaru Boys High School First 15. When he returned last year, the youngster was brought into the Fiji Rugby Union High Performance Program. This year, he was rewarded with a call-up to join the Fiji Warriors in the Pacific Rugby Challenge. He says to play the Skipper Cup champions in his first outing was a blessing in disguise.
Yes, it's a blessing. I just want to thank the teammates for the hard work inside the field. Without them, I wouldn't be playing this good.
The youngster adds he is lucky to have some seasoned campaigners in the Nanronga side who help him at training.
The experience one time, I've always watched them on TV. It's a dream come true for me to play again, with them.
Nanronga winger Choweli Lutumailangi says Vasarukuta is a disciplined player and he listens to the advice of the senior players.
I was so proud of him for wearing the number 13 jersey. I kept encouraging him not to be afraid and wear the number 13 jersey with pride. If you happen to face any challenges in the match, I advise him to take it as a man and keep pushing on.
Wasurakuta is expected to make the Nadrunga lineup again against Namosi next weekend at Lawanga Park. Karleni Tavi, FBC Sports.
The Suva football team has noted a few areas in need of improvement before it faces Mba on Saturday in the Vodafone Premier League. Suva's initial aim for top spot in the VPL standings is now in reach, with the final round of competition set for this week. This win has pushed Suva to second place on the points table with 12, while leaders Rewa are on 16 points. Karleni Tavi has more.
After escaping a 1-0 win against a tough Nandi side yesterday, the capital side is mindful of the intensity that comes with each round of competition. Suva FA President Ritesh Pratap says the team were under pressure from the Green Machines, but luck was on their side.
As everybody has seen, I think Nandi was all over Suva. Even as officials, we were under pressure. We didn't know what was happening. But luckily, we came victorious end of the day.
Rectifying the mistake from yesterday's match will be the main focus at this week's training.
We will be camping from Tuesday, and hopefully we can rectify all those mistakes what we have noted today.
Content Nandi coach Kamal Swami says, despite lacking depth in the team, the Green Machines performed beyond expectation.
I think we played 90 minutes, but unfortunately we could not score. And there was some situation where we had to give some young players game because of the card system, and some of the players were yellow carded, so we didn't have the depth in the team, but still we played very well.
In this week's VPL match, Ba will host Suva at the Fiji FA Academy ground at 3 p.m. Karleni Tavi, FBC Sports.
And you can watch this Saturday's match between Ba and Suva live and exclusive on FBC TV, while radio commentary will be on Mirchi FM. Navo Football says that teamwork was key in registering their first win in the Vodafone Premier League against Nasinu at Ratodakambao Park yesterday. Locked at 2-2 in the final minutes of play, Navo captain Vinit Chand was the hero of the side when he scored a late goal to give his side their first win from 7 matches and the much-needed 3 points in the VPL table.
I really told them it's a do-and-die situation for us, and then they really performed the way we required them to do it, and yeah, they were all eager to win today.
The Penrith Panthers retained their competition lead on the NRL ladder with a 22-14 win over the Titans at the Cbus Super Stadium in the Gold Coast last night. A contentious second-half try helped the injury-hit Penrith to hold out Gold Coast in wet conditions and regain top spot. The Super Rugby Aotearoa and the Blues managed to escape a late Chiefs fight back to win 21-17 at Eden Park in Auckland last night. Manchester United secured a place in the Champions League at the expense of Leicester City with a 2-0 victory this morning. United needed a point from this decisive final day meeting to confirm a place in the top 4 and break the hearts of the Foxes, who were in a Champions League spot for so much of the season. Here are the goals. And Chelsea sealed the 4th place in the Premier League to wrap up qualification for next season's Champions League with a comfortable 2-0 victory over Wolves. Frank Lampard's side needed a point from the potentially nervy encounter at Stamford Bridge in order to clinch a top 4 place, but they claimed all 3 in style. In today's Play of the Day, we're off to the EPL. Managerless Watford were relegated from the Premier League on the final day of the season as Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang inspired Arsenal to victory. The 3-2 win will be remembered for this particular goal by Aubameyang. That's it from Sports Tonight. In new media after the break, Twitter continues its blockbusting growth. Details coming up.
Hola, my name is Salate. I'm from Navindang. We love listening to the FM.
My name is Koto. I'm from Nagaranga. I love Today FM because of latest hit music and Today FM rocks.
My name is Sulweti. I'm from Nagaranga. Today FM rocks.
And Angie joins us now with the latest in weather.
Hello there and welcome to the Weather World. It's Monday and it's the last week of July, pretty fast. How was Monday morning start in your area? Rainy and wet or nice and bright? Let's find out. In the west, dry with clear periods, sunshine never forsakes. The day turned out pretty well. Eastwards from Peck Harbour to Suva, it was dull and gloomy. Rain was on and off. The central weather is always unpredictable. And up north, interestingly, it had a bit of both. Cool weather is good as well. At sea, southeast winds are a little tough, gusting from 25 to 30 knots, rough seas. Now turning to the tides, high tide at 12:44 a.m. with low tide at 6:44 a.m. Sunrise at 6:36. For tomorrow, it will be cool with the morning giving way to scattered showers. Other than that, it will be fine by daybreak. Tomorrow's temps, Suva will be cool with lows of 21 degrees. And looking further on to Wednesday, the day will improve to nicer and brighter spells. That's all the weather news from my end. It's back to the lady with a nice coat.
Thanks so much for that, Angie. In Fiji and Pulse tonight, we asked, do you think our tourism sector will be able to bounce back quickly with the new initiatives in place?
If the government help, we can do this again. Everything will go well.
This will all just be up to opening our borders to tourists from overseas that will determine if the tourism industry will bounce back.
I think it would be good, and we should just work together as locals so everything can go back to the way it was.
I think that the money used on getting the tourist industry back should be given to the people like us who are from the highlands. So I don't agree.
Now, with schools closed and classes cancelled in Brazil, a teacher missing her students has come up with a new idea. In the world of the weird and the wonderful, we tell you how she decided to make hug kits so she could safely embrace her students. This from Buzz 60.
A teacher in Brazil is going above and beyond for her students by delivering them hug kits. Teacher Mara Silva and her students had their classes canceled and stayed home due to the COVID-19 pandemic. But she decided she had to reach out and see her students. But how? With bags of face masks and protective clothing, along with sweets, she created hug kits. And she certainly puts the hug in hug kits with her visits by embracing her students. It is indescribable. It's love, a feeling that comes from inside. It's that nostalgia. It comes from the heart. And to see their eyes and see the happiness in their eyes. They tell me, you came to my house, you came to see me, you really came to hug me. It is as if we have established infinite connections, adding people who were apart have gotten closer, and families that weren't in the habit of seeing one another now want to see each other more often. So far, there are close to 2.3 million cases in Brazil, the second most cases worldwide behind the United States.
Recapping the main stories for tonight, PM and Rambuka go head-on in budget debate. Sugar payment issues clarified in Parliament. An opposition MP blames evil forces for COVID-19. Now for these stories and others, tune in daily to our sister radio station Gold FM. Our poll question last week we had asked, do you feel the new budget is going to make things easier in these trying times? 71% said yes. And this week we're asking, with liquidity set to rise to $1 billion, should banks decrease interest rates? Visit our FBC website to answer. And before we go, our shot of the day to start a new week. This was taken at Yalava village in Madawata by Noah Tawake. And you can send us newsworthy pictures and videos on email fbcnews@fbc.com.fj, via Facebook page FBC News and our Twitter page at FBC_news. That's your news for tonight. Until tomorrow from the team and I, stay safe. Bye for now.
Na vango la tila tarelau au daptu mana korbatur on tawaran na tinoele na santa konrobe totale takana warang wale na mula fam ira kena serap kena puta baka do mata greden
pula la hako derstia au baki tuga lo toka au tali takana warang na mula fm na banduan serre
solo minang ya to sabi betapuan to warang na mula fm na banduan serre
FM, number 2 en serie.